Hi again guys, and welcome to the 53rd episode of Weekend Warriors, this time revisiting again, as we have this week, Gran Turismo 2 for another vehicle which is no longer featured in the Gran Turismo franchise, and not just that, this is also a manufacturer which hasn't been featured on Gran Turismo since GT2, and like some others such as Vector, this is a manufacturer which many people would like to see return, myself included, and the manufacturer is a French one called Venturi, and they are an exotic car manufacturer. They don't have a huge lineup of models on the game, they have two. There's the Venturi Atlantique 300 Biturbo, or Twin Turbo, which is this model here, and there's also the 400 GT, which is kind of like France's answer to the Ferrari F40. Personally, I actually prefer the Venturi to the Ferrari F40, but I've always preferred the more oddball alternatives. So for those who maybe have never played GT2, what was this car like? What are you missing now? Well, it's pretty expensive. It costs just over 100 grand, and the 400 GT costs even more. And for that, you get a 3-litre turbo V6 engine. It's mid-mounted, rear-wheel drive, and it puts out very impressive numbers, but in particular when tuned, because in stock form the numbers on the 300 in particular don't actually sound that remarkable. You've got less than 300 horsepower and the performance is more akin to something like a Lotus Esprit, for instance, or a Porsche 911, so not bad by any means, certainly good enough for its time, but not what you'd call an exotic supercar by any standards. And you do still occasionally, at least here in the UK and I'm sure other parts of Europe as well, see these cars for sale, sometimes for surprisingly low prices. The last time I saw one, I believe it was around £20,000 or £30,000 here in the UK, which is remarkably cheap given how exclusive the car is. It really is France's answer to the Lotus Esprit, and personally I actually like it more than the Esprit. It has a simple, classy, very good looking style to it, and on the game, as I mentioned just now, it has some very serious tuning potential. Because although the stock specs on the 300 Biturbo are very much a traditional sports car, when you tune it, it's actually more supercar level in terms of the numbers that you're putting out. 631 horsepower is very impressive, especially for Gran Turismo 2. There weren't that many cars on that game which would see that kind of power increase, especially not non-Japanese ones. As far as torque as well, you're looking at 567 pound-feet, and when you put all of that power and torque into a vehicle which only weighs 1,112 kilos, you're looking at pretty amazing performance, or at least the potential for pretty amazing performance. The horsepower per tonne on this car is incidentally a very impressive 567, and at the end of the day, once you start putting out numbers like those, it starts to kind of justify that 105-ish grand price tag, because now on Gran Turismo this would be a perfect rival with similar tune specs, especially to something like the Spiker C8 La Violette, which is also that boutique, smaller, more exclusive, exotic vehicle. But of course with the Spiker it's already a super sports car, whereas this is a lower level sports car, but when tuned, it's got very similar numbers. Similar to the Olam Spira as well, that lower level, slightly more undervalued example of an exotic or a traditional sports car. Now as far as performance goes, this is a really fast car. It's one of the quickest non-supercars in the game. It's extremely quick. You can get up to around 300 kilometers per hour on the game pretty easily. That's around 190 miles per hour or so. And for Gran Turismo 2, that's pretty high. There are definitely quicker cars than that, but not generally for this kind of price and for this kind of vehicle. What though about the handling? Because being a French car, you could think, well, do they really know what they're doing as much as a company like Ferrari or Lambo or Maserati or, of course, Lotus, who are known for handling? Well, actually, at least as far as GT2 goes, they really do know what they're doing, because both of the Venturi road cars and also the race car, which they have as well, the 600 LM, they're remarkable. But the road cars in particular are surprisingly good, given the fact that many road cars on GT2 weren't necessarily dominating machines. especially when you put them up against race cars. This one is one of the relatively few which can actually take on race cars, because the handling, although not perfect, ironically it actually has a little bit of understeer, which is probably the last thing you'd expect from a mid-engine rear-wheel drive 600 horsepower sports car, but it's actually kind of cool that it does that, because it allows you to work with that understeer and actually turn it into a pretty impressive track machine. So if you get the chance to play GT2, this is definitely one of the vehicles which I would highlight to try and get the chance to drive, and the 400 GT even more so. But that's it for this pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.